Hi everyone, in this short video I'm going to share with you how to find the domain of a composite function. To give you an overview, there are two scenarios that we should be aware of. Now in scenario number 1, the domains of f and g are specifically defined for you, which is the case for many questions in the A-level H2 math. Something like you see in this question over here. The domain of fg is simply the domain of g, or the domain of the inside function g. This will be equals to inclusive 0 to positive infinity, since it is all the real numbers including 0. However, when the domains of the functions f and g are not defined or given to you, it brings us to scenario number 2. Suppose we have the same functions f and g, and we want to find the domain of the composite function fg. Now the domain of fg is then the domain of the inside function g. However, the difference is that we also need to consider the domain of the simplified composite function as well. So in this scenario, let's try to find the composite function fg first. And this will give us 10, 1 minus e to the power of negative x. So as mentioned earlier, this domain is simply the domain of g, which is all the real numbers. However, we also need to consider the domain of the simplified composite function as well, which is also all the real numbers over here. Now, if we were to sketch the function fg using a graphing calculator, x can take any real values. So the domain of this expression over here is also all real values. Thus, we combine these two domains and conclude that the domain of fg is simply all the real numbers. Now, as you can observe, this is quite different from the answer in scenario 1, mainly because the domains of each of the functions are not given to you. Now, let's try to attempt another example with this question over here, where the domain is defined for you. Now, applying the concept we have learned previously, if the domains of the individual functions are given to you, the domain of the composite function, in this case gf, is equal to the domain of f, or the domain of that inside function, which is f. Simply put, the domain will then be equals to 1 inclusive to positive infinity. Now the tricky part comes over here in scenario number 2, where the domains of each of the individual functions are not given to you. Now coming back to these same two functions, we first need to find the composite function gf. So this will be equals to 1 over 2x minus 1. Now as you can see over here, this expression is a fraction, and we cannot have 0 in the denominator, otherwise the fraction will be undefined. Therefore, the domain of this expression over here is negative infinity to half, with a union sign to join it with half to infinity, because x cannot be half. If x is half, as I've mentioned earlier, the denominator will be 0 and the fraction or the expression will be undefined. Similar to the previous example, the domain of gf is the domain of f and the domain of the simplified function over here that you see. So the domain of gf is actually all the real numbers. However, we have to consider this domain over here because x cannot be equals to half. Therefore, the domain of gf includes negative infinity to half and union half to positive infinity. Now I do hope you have a better understanding of finding the domains of a composite function. So if you'd like to find the range of a composite function, do check out the link in the description box below. And thank you so much for watching.